Your brother didn't actually die in that car accident, my dying grandmother whispered to me in the hospital. After 15 years of grieving him, I started digging into what really happened that night. I'm Lena, 30 female, and I have this awful habit of memorizing the exact sound of bad news. When I was 15, it was my mother's scream ricocheting off our kitchen tile. Last week, it was a whisper rasping through hospital plastic and lemon disinfectant. Ruth, 81 female, my grandmother, pinched my wrist with fingers like dry twigs and breathed, "Your brother didn't actually die in that car accident." The heart monitor ticked like a metronome to the end of the world. Caleb, 33 male, my brother, has been dead to us for 15 years. Or that's what I've told every boyfriend, every therapist, every form that asked for next of kin. He was the kind of older brother you imagine saving you from monsters under the bed, and then actually does. Sleeping bag on the floor, flashlight tilted up under his chin, telling jokes until dawn. He taught me to drive in his crappy red Civic with the peeling "Support Local Music" bumper sticker and a glove compartment full of gas station receipts and guitar picks. He called me Bean. No one else took the risk. He made things less sharp. Diane, 53 female, my mother, made the house sharp again after he died. She threw away his sneakers and boxed his PlayStation before the autopsy ink dried. Busy hands, busy mind. She couldn't bear the smell of his room, Old Spice and detergent, so she scrubbed it until the air tasted like bleach and grief. She installed a cross above the doorway and pretended that fixed it. Rick, 57 male, my stepfather, arrived 2 years later with a toolbox and a rulebook. He replaced Caleb's bedroom door with one that squeaked and insisted on family dinners where we say what we're grateful for. He's always been kind if you're watching him and mean when you blink. He calls me kiddo, like it's a pet name and not a muzzle. I remember the night it happened, if happened is even the word now. Rain rattled the gutters like someone shaking a jar of coins. Sheriff Mills, 58 male, our town's sheriff, knocked at 2:14 a.m., his hat plastered to his head like another layer of skin. He said words like "slick road" and "curve by Sawmill Bridge" and "closed casket recommended," all of it carefully stacked on top of the worst word, fatal. The next morning, I found a tiny triangle of windshield glass in my Converse. I keep it in a matchbox in my jewelry tray. It was supposed to be a relic. Maybe it's a clue. At the hospital, Ruth's breath came in strings. She looked scared in that way old people get when they realize they've been guarding a secret longer than they've been guarding their own pulse. "He called me," she said, eyes sliding toward the ceiling tiles like she was reading from a teleprompter only she could see. The night after, he said, "Tell Bean I'm sorry. Your mother. Your mother made me promise." I didn't cry. Something colder than crying laid itself over me, like frost on a window that no warm hand can melt. I thought about the funeral, the sealed cedar box, the way Pastor Joel, 60 male, our church pastor, said mysterious ways, as if mystery was a virtue and not a trapdoor. I thought about the crash site that Rick never let me visit, the way he steered the car the long way around even years later. I thought about my mother's steady hands, how they never shook, not once, when she signed forms, made calls, planned a funeral without ever touching the casket. "Tell me everything," I said, and Ruth tried. She coughed and the nurse came and shooed me out, but the whisper lodged like a splinter. He didn't actually die. That night I stood in Caleb's old room, hands on the cross Rick hung, and I twisted until the nail groaned. When the cross finally came off, the drywall behind it had a faint sun-bleached rectangle, like a missing picture. It felt like the house had been holding its breath for 15 years. I pressed the cross to my chest and promised him out loud, "I'm going to find you. Or him. Or the truth. Whatever survived that night, I'm going to dig it out, even if I have to pry up this whole floorboard life." The next morning, I drove out to Sawmill Bridge. Rick always avoided this stretch of road, like the curve itself might spill secrets if we got too close. The asphalt was scarred, spiderweb cracks running through the bend like old wounds. But what caught me was the guardrail. It wasn't bent, not bowed or torn the way it should have been if a Civic had slammed into it at 60 miles an hour. I crouched, running my fingers over the steel. Smooth. Untouched. The crash site where my brother supposedly died looked like nothing had ever happened. My chest buzzed with panic. I called the county records office posing as a college student writing a paper on local traffic fatalities. The clerk sounded bored, tapping keys. Fatal accident on Sawmill Bridge 2008, don't see it. I swallowed. Maybe under the victim's name? Caleb Walker. Click-clack. No record. Are you sure you've got the right county? My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. 15 years of grief and there wasn't even a line item in the county's database. That night I confronted my mom. Diane was in the kitchen, stirring pasta sauce with surgical precision. Rick sat in his recliner, TV glow painting his face like a mask. Why didn't the county have any record of Caleb's accident? I asked. Diane froze, spoon midair. Rick's head snapped toward me. What the hell are you digging into this for? Rick barked, slamming the remote onto the armrest. That boy's dead. End of story. He's not, I said, my voice shaking but loud. Grandma told me. And there's no record, no crash report, no death certificate. Diane's eyes darted to Rick before she spoke. Lena, stop this. You're upsetting yourself. Upsetting myself? You made me bury an empty box, didn't you? My voice cracked, but I didn't care. Rick stood up so fast the recliner nearly tipped. He loomed over me, breath sour with whiskey. You don't know what you're talking about. Drop it. When I didn't move, he slapped the counter with his palm so hard the spoon clattered into the sauce, red splattering the backsplash like blood spray. Diane flinched. I saw something in her eyes then. Not grief, not denial, fear. That night, when they thought I was asleep, I heard them through the wall. Diane's muffled sobs, Rick's voice low but sharp. If she keeps digging, she's gonna ruin everything. You promised we'd never speak of it again. I lay there clutching the matchbox with Caleb's shard of glass, whispering to myself like a vow. I'm not stopping. Not this time. Don't forget to subscribe. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office myself. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The woman at the desk scrolled through her ancient green screen system, smacking her gum like she was bored with existence. I'm telling you, sweetheart, no Caleb Walker, no accident, no autopsy, nada, I pressed. What about an unidentified body around that date? Maybe it wasn't filed under his name. She sighed, punched a few more keys, then shook her head. Only thing that came through that week was a John Doe found near the river. No accident report. A John Doe. My stomach flipped. Could they have buried a stranger in my brother's box? I left the clerk's office with my head buzzing. Outside, parked crooked near the curb, was Rick's truck. My pulse shot through the roof. He was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, chewing a toothpick like a cliché villain. What the hell are you doing here? I snapped before I could stop myself. Rick's smile was thin, sharp. Funny, I was going to ask you the same thing. Snooping through records like some detective. You think you're smarter than everyone, Lena? You're not. Some rocks aren't meant to be overturned. He pushed off the truck and came closer, close enough that I could smell the mix of whiskey and motor oil on his breath. You keep digging, you'll regret it. I swallowed the fear clawing at my throat. What did you do to Caleb? Rick's jaw twitched. He didn't answer. Just climbed back into his truck, slammed the door, and peeled away hard enough to spit gravel against my shins. I stood there shaking, a bruise already forming on my calf where the rocks hit. But I didn't feel pain. Just rage. That night, I pulled down the shoebox of old photos from the top of my closet. Most were faded snapshots. Caleb with frosting on his nose at his 17th birthday. Caleb holding me on his shoulders at the county fair. But tucked behind them was a school photo of him, junior year, with his messy hair half in his eyes. On the back, in his slanted handwriting, for Bean. Don't let them tell you who I am. I don't know why I'd never noticed it before. Maybe Mom shoved it away so I wouldn't. But reading it now felt like a flare gun fired into the dark. He was warning me even then. I decided to find Sheriff Mills. He'd been the one to deliver the death notice, hat in hand, rain dripping off the brim. If anyone knew the truth about that night, it was him. But when I called the sheriff's office, the young deputy on the line hesitated before answering. Uh, Sheriff Mills retired 5 years ago. Lives out by Willow Creek now. Doesn't really like visitors. Perfect. That night, I drove past my mom's house just to see. One upstairs light was on, her bedroom. But down in the garage, through the cracked door, I caught a shadow moving. Not Rick's bulky frame. Thinner. Taller. My breath hitched so violently I nearly choked. For a heartbeat, I swore it was Caleb. I blinked, and the shadow was gone. The garage door rattled shut. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel until my nails carved half moons into the leather. Either I was losing my mind, or my brother had just been standing in my mother's house. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in my apartment sounded like footsteps. Every car passing outside made my chest seize. If that shadow in the garage really was Caleb, then my entire life had been built on a staged funeral. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to Willow Creek to find Sheriff Mills. His house was more like a sagging shack with an American flag faded nearly white out front. A rusted Ford sat in the weeds, hood up, as if waiting for a mechanic who never came. He answered the door in a stained undershirt, eyes roomy but sharp. "Walker girl," he said, before I could introduce myself. His voice still had that authoritative weight, but thinner now, brittle. "I figured you'd come someday." I froze. "You knew I'd come?" He stepped aside, gesturing me in with a hand that shook slightly. "Your brother's blood is all over my conscience. Sit down." The living room smelled of tobacco and mothballs. On the wall hung his old badge, dulled with dust. He poured himself a glass of something brown and didn't offer me any. "They told me to say it was a car crash," Mills said, staring into his drink. "I saw the body in that box. It wasn't your brother. Hell, I don't even think it was anyone from here. Just some drifter they pulled out of the river." My stomach turned. "So why did you lie? Why did you make me believe my brother was gone?" He slammed the glass onto the table so hard liquid splashed. "Because Rick made it clear. If I didn't, there'd be consequences. Not just for me. For my wife, my kids. He had people in his pocket back then. Still does, I bet." The name dropped between us like a hammer. Rick. Always Rick. "What happened to Caleb?" My voice broke. "Is he alive?" Mills looked at me then, his eyes shining wet. "Last I heard, he was sent away. Witness protection of a sort, but not the government's kind. More like Rick's private exile. Your brother saw something he wasn't supposed to. Something involving Rick. And your mother. She helped cover it up." I wanted to scream. My nails dug half moons into my palms. "So where is he?" Mills shook his head. "Don't know. But if you're seeing shadows that look like him, then maybe he found his way back." On the drive home, rage sat heavy in my chest like a second heartbeat. If Caleb had been forced to disappear because of Rick, then every year of grief, every therapy bill, every birthday candle I blew out alone had been manufactured by that man. When I pulled into my complex, I noticed something off. My apartment door was ajar. I hadn't left it that way. Inside, drawers were pulled open, couch cushions slashed with something sharp. My jewelry tray was overturned, the matchbox that held the shard of Caleb's windshield glass gone. I sank to my knees. That little triangle of glass had been my anchor, my proof of love and loss. Now it was stolen. And I knew exactly who had taken it. Rick wasn't just warning me anymore. He was showing me he could rip apart the pieces of my life at will. I sat there, the empty matchbox in my hand, and something in me hardened. If Caleb had been exiled by Rick's lies, then I was going to drag Rick into the light, even if I had to burn down everything else in the process. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow, I honestly didn't expect this to blow up like it did. I thought I was just screaming into the void, but y'all actually listened. Some of your comments had me laughing through the panic, like the guy who said, "Plot twist, Caleb's been living in the garage like a raccoon this whole time." Not gonna lie, that image kept me from hyperventilating last night. But most of you get it. You saw the red flags in Rick before I even finished typing his name. A bunch of you said the same thing. This guy's dangerous. And you're right, because he broke into my apartment. Yeah? Came home yesterday to find my door cracked open, drawers pulled out, cushions slashed like he was looking for drugs. But what he actually took, that matchbox with Caleb's shard of windshield glass. The one thing I kept as proof. 15 years of grief distilled into a triangle of broken glass. And now it's gone. I sat on my floor, staring at that empty matchbox, shaking so hard I thought I'd pass out. That was Rick's way of saying, I can take everything from you. Not just Caleb, not just the truth, even the scraps you hold on to. And some of you asked about my mom, Diane, whether she's another victim or part of the machine. I wish I could tell you she's just scared, that she's been manipulated all these years. But when I replay the sound of her voice through the wall, you promised we'd never speak of it again. I know. She chose silence. She chose him. Here's the other thing. I tracked down Sheriff Mills, the one who told us Caleb was dead. He basically admitted the body in the casket wasn't Caleb. Said Rick pressured him into the cover-up, threatened his family. I thought I was prepared to hear it, but my stomach still dropped like an elevator cable snapping. So now I'm here. My brother might still be alive. My stepfather staged his death. My mother went along with it. And they're both trying to scare me back into silence. Except, screw that. Because here's the thing Rick doesn't know. I'm not 15 anymore. I'm not that girl clutching her Converse with glass stuck in the sole. I'm 30, I've got nothing left to lose, and he just made the mistake of stealing from me. Some of y'all said I should burn the house down. Tempting, not gonna lie. But I'm not starting with fire. I'm starting with truth. And maybe a little blood, if it comes to that. I'm going to find Caleb. And when I do, Rick is going to wish he stayed the ghost he tried to make my brother. I didn't go back to my apartment after Rick trashed it. Couldn't stand the smell of ripped fabric and rage. Instead, I drove aimlessly until I found myself outside the old library where Caleb and I used to spend summer afternoons. He loved the back microfilm machines, scrolling through old newspapers like he was time traveling. So that's where I started. 15 years back, the week of his accident. The local paper had a tiny blurb. Single vehicle crash at Sawmill Bridge. Fatality. Name withheld. Pending notification of family. That was it. No follow-up, no obituary, no photos of the mangled car like they always ran for local tragedies. Just one paragraph, like a ghost story told in daylight. But then, 3 days later, another headline buried on page 5. Unidentified male found dead in river. No foul play suspected. John Doe. The one the clerk mentioned. I printed it, hands trembling, because it meant the casket at Caleb's funeral probably held that man, not my brother. I was shoving the printout into my bag when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, "Stop digging or you'll end up like him." I nearly dropped the phone. The timing. It had to be Rick. But how would he know I was at the library? Was he watching me? I left fast, adrenaline spiking, scanning every car in the lot. My own reflection in the glass doors looked pale, feral, like a hunted thing. Instead of driving home, I headed straight to my mom's. Her garage door was shut tight this time, but I didn't knock. I walked around back, slipped in through the side gate, and peered through the garage's grimy window. It was empty. Tools stacked neatly, Rick's motorcycle under a tarp. No shadow, no Caleb. But as I turned to leave, I caught something on the workbench. A Polaroid. I froze, heart clawing up my throat. It was Caleb. Older, thinner, hair cut short. His eyes wild, hollow, like someone half-starved of sunlight. Scrawled across the bottom in black marker, "Keep away." I stuffed the Polaroid into my jacket before anyone could catch me. By the time I got back to my car, I was shaking so bad I had to brace my forehead against the steering wheel. My brother wasn't dead. He was here. He was being hidden. And if Rick had that photo in his garage, then Rick knew exactly where Caleb was. And if Rick thought he could keep him caged forever, he had no idea what kind of storm I was about to unleash. That night, I started a new notebook. First page. Rule number 1. Rick doesn't get to win. I taped the Polaroid inside, stared at Caleb's haunted eyes and whispered, "I'm coming for you. I swear it." And as the words left my lips, I already knew. Revenge wouldn't just be about saving Caleb. It would be about tearing Rick's whole empire of lies down, brick by brick, until there was nothing left but the truth. I couldn't stop staring at that Polaroid. Caleb's eyes looked feral, like a caged animal. But it wasn't just fear. I saw defiance in them, too. My brother hadn't broken. That meant neither could I. I decided to hit Rick where he lived. Control. He thrived on secrets, intimidation, being the one who knew more than anyone else. So I was going to rip that from him. The first step? Exposure. I scanned the Polaroid into my laptop and printed copies. Slipped one into Pastor Joel's mailbox. Left another in an envelope on Sheriff Mill's porch. I even taped one to the bulletin board at the grocery store under the ad for lost cats and piano lessons. No note, just Caleb's haunted face. Let people wonder. Let whispers spread. The next night, I crept back to Diane's house. The curtains glowed with lamplight, Rick's silhouette lumbering across the living room. I crouched under the kitchen window, heart banging like a snare drum, and slid an envelope beneath the door. Inside, the photo and a single line written in black marker. The truth always rots when buried. Petty? Maybe. But necessary. I wanted Rick off balance, paranoid. I wanted him to know he wasn't the only one who could creep into someone else's home. 2 nights later, I got my wish. A crash shattered the dark. I bolted upright to see my car windshield spiderwebbed, glass glittering like diamonds on the pavement. Spray painted across the hood in dripping red letters. Bean stays out. My childhood nickname. Only Caleb called me that. My blood iced over. Either Rick used it to mess with my head or, worse, Caleb himself had been forced to write it. The cops came, but their questions were lazy, like they were half asleep. When I mentioned Rick's name, the officer just shifted uncomfortably and said, "Best not to stir up old wounds, ma'am." They weren't going to help me. I realized then I was completely on my own. So I leaned in. I called Rick from a burner phone, masked my voice with a low growl. "I know where you're keeping him. Tick, 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 Rick." Then I hung up. The next day, I drove past his house. Sure enough, there he was, storming across the yard, screaming into his cell, yanking down the garage blinds like a madman. Exactly what I wanted. I'd cracked his armor. That night, I pulled out my notebook. On a fresh page, I wrote, "Rule number 2. Make Rick lose control in public. Because secrets rot in silence, but reputations rot faster in daylight." And I already knew the perfect place to start. Sunday service at Pastor Joel's church, where Rick strutted like a saint. I was done hiding. It was time to bleed the truth in front of everyone. Update 2. I didn't think I'd be back this soon, but yeah. Shut blew up again. First off, I read every single one of your comments on my last post. Some of you had me cackling, especially the guy who said, "Just go full Scooby-Doo and rip Rick's mask off in public." Don't tempt me, dude. Others were dead serious, warning me to get out before I end up in a ditch. I hear you. I know the risk. But I can't stop now, because Rick escalated. 2 nights ago, my car windshield got smashed in. Spray painted across the hood in dripping red. "Bean stays out." My brother's nickname for me. That gutted me. I don't know if it was Rick mocking me or Caleb himself forced to write it, but either way it felt like a punch straight to the chest. 15 years of holding on to that name as something tender, safe, and now it's a weapon. The cops? Useless. Shrugged like I was wasting their time. One actually told me, best not to stir up old wounds. Like vandalism and death threats are just small-town gossip. So I decided to flip it. A bunch of you said I should hit Rick where it hurts, his reputation, his fake image of control. And you're right. That's exactly what I've started doing. I made copies of the Polaroid I found in his garage, the one of Caleb, older, hollow-eyed, with "Keep away" scrawled across it. Left them in mailboxes. Pinned one on the grocery store bulletin board. Slid another under my mom's front door with a little message. The truth always rots when buried. And the best part? Rick took the bait. I called him from a burner phone, told him I knew where Caleb was, and hung up. Next day I drove by. He was outside, red-faced, screaming into his phone, tearing his blinds down like a lunatic. For once, he wasn't the one pulling the strings. So here's where we're at. I'm done playing defense. Rick wanted to scare me into silence. Too late. This Sunday at Pastor Joel's church, the one where Rick parades around like a respectable pillar of the community, I'm going to light the match. I don't know if Caleb will be there. I don't know if I'll make it out without Rick exploding in front of everyone. But I do know this. When I walk into that church with the truth in my hands, Rick's little kingdom of lies is going to crumble. Pray for me, Reddit. Or don't. Just keep reading, because I swear, this is where it all burns. Sunday morning, I walked into church with the Polaroid tucked in my Bible like a psalm. The place smelled of old wood polish and lilies, the kind of scent that pretends holiness but can't mask rot. Pastor Joel was at the pulpit, voice booming about forgiveness. Diane sat in the front row, hands folded tight. Rick was beside her, jaw clenched, trying to look pious. But when his eyes landed on me, sliding into a pew near the aisle, I saw his veneer crack. I didn't wait for the sermon to end. My legs carried me forward before I could lose nerve. Heart hammering, I marched right up the center aisle, the creak of my boots echoing. "Pastor," I called, my voice louder than I expected, bouncing off stained glass. "I have something the congregation needs to see." Joel blinked, startled. Rick shot up from his seat, face flushed purple. "Sit down, Lena," he barked, voice rattling the rafters. I held up the Polaroid. Caleb's hollow eyes glared out at everyone. Gasps rippled through the pews. "This is my brother, Caleb Walker. The same brother Rick told us was dead. The same brother my mother buried in a closed casket. The same brother this church prayed for." Joel stammered. "Child, this is—" "No!" My voice cracked, but I pressed on. "This is the truth. He's alive. He's been alive all these years, hidden. And Rick knew. Diane knew. They let me grieve an empty box while my brother was locked away like a secret." The room erupted. Murmurs, sharp breaths, someone crying out, "Oh my God!" Rick lunged at me. Not a metaphor, he actually lunged, shoving past Diane so hard she stumbled. His hand clamped around my wrist, iron and rage. "You shut your damn mouth!" Gasps turned into shouts. People scrambled to their feet. I twisted free and flung the photo across the pews. Copies fluttered like confetti, Caleb's face staring from every lap. The whispers turned into a roar. "Liar!" Rick bellowed, his voice breaking. He knocked over a hymnal stand, the crash ringing like a gunshot. "She's insane! She's obsessed with ghosts!" But his eyes, wild, bloodshot, betrayed him. The mask was gone. He was just a man unraveling in front of everyone. "Tell them where he is," I screamed. "Tell them what you did to him." Diane finally stood, trembling, hands to her mouth. For a second, I thought she might defend him. Instead, she whispered, "Rick, please stop." That hesitation was enough. People surged between us, separating me from his rage. Pastor Joel shouted for calm, but it was too late. The truth was already loose in the room, buzzing in every whispered accusation, every stare drilling into Rick. He tried to leave, but half the congregation blocked the door, demanding answers. I saw him sweating, twitching, his body shaking with fury like he might swing at anyone in his way. And that's when I realized, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because if Rick had kept Caleb hidden this long, then someone, somewhere, knew where my brother really was. And after today, the whole damn town would be talking. The whispers Rick buried for 15 years were about to become a chorus. And I was going to follow that chorus until it led me straight to Caleb. After the church blew apart in chaos, I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt hollow, like I'd cracked open the dam but was still drowning. People called me brave. Some called me crazy. But the whispers had started, and whispers spread like wildfire in a small town. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice, raspy, barely more than a breath. "Bean?" My knees buckled. I slid to the floor, clutching the phone. "Caleb?" Silence. Then, "I can't talk long. He's watching." But I saw you at the church. I knew you'd find me. My throat closed up. Where are you? Static. Then, the old mill. Midnight. The line went dead. I drove out there like a woman possessed. The mill sat hunched against the river, windows busted, graffiti screaming from the walls. My flashlight beam cut through dust and broken beams until it landed on a figure in the corner. Caleb. Older, thinner, eyes sunken, but it was him. My brother. For a second, we just stared, disbelief holding us apart. Then I ran to him, arms around his bony frame, both of us shaking like the world might split open beneath us. I thought you were dead, I sobbed into his shoulder. I was supposed to be, he whispered. Rick made sure of it. I saw him, back then, beating a man near the river. Said it was business, said if I told anyone, I'd disappear. And I did. His laugh was broken glass. He kept me stashed in places, friends of his. Sometimes locked up, sometimes working under fake names. Always a ghost. I pulled back, cupping his face. Not anymore. You're coming home. But before we could move, headlights slashed across the broken windows. Rick's truck. He stormed in, wild-eyed, a crowbar clenched in his fist. You couldn't leave it alone, he snarled, spit flying. 15 years I kept this under control. 15 years, and you had to ruin it. I stepped in front of Caleb, hands shaking but steady. You ruined yourself. Everyone saw you at church. They know. He raised the crowbar, face twisted, and for a moment I thought this was it. The way our story ended. But then another light cut in. Red and blue. Sheriff Mills leaning heavier than I'd ever seen, but badge still glinting on his belt. Behind him, 2 deputies. Drop it, Rick, Mills said, voice cracked but firm. It's over. For once, Rick hesitated. His eyes darted, calculating, but there was nowhere left to run. Slowly, the crowbar clattered to the floor. When they dragged him away, he screamed threats, curses, promises of vengeance. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. He wasn't a monster anymore, just a man in cuffs. I turned back to Caleb. He was crying, but for once, so was I. Later, when the dust settled, I taped the Polaroid back into my notebook. Not as evidence anymore, but as a reminder. Of lies. Of survival. Of the fire it took to bring my brother back into the light. And when Caleb finally slept on my couch that night, safe, free, his breathing steady, I whispered to the dark, 15 years late, but I kept my promise being to brother. I found you. And this time, no one was taking him away.